Can a person who lives a blessed life still feel pain inside? What happens when prayer isn't enough to solve issues like depression, addiction, and anxiety? Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Those who are saved but suffer on the inside. Mental health.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Big E, the elephant in the room. My name is Melissa.
And my name is Jackie.
And today we'll be talking about mental illness in the church. This has become such an issue and a stigma that has developed over the years, and we thought it would be a great time to bring forth mental illness in the church. And we have wonderful guests to be able to help us along and even develop ways how we can move forward with this situation. So we have wonderful guests, Mr. Mark Cooper and Mr. Raymond King. Thank you for joining us today, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you. So let's just jump right into this. We're going to start with Raymond King. What has been your views over the years, and what have you seen over the years dealing with mental illness, or what you have seen mental illness in the church?
Well, I probably take more of a personal approach. Growing up, you hear about mental illness, and a lot of times it's labeled as something demonic, or your lack of spiritual faith, or your lack of spiritual walk with God. So you don't hear enough about that this is actually real, and then it can happen to Christians. The other thing is you don't hear a lot of strong support for seeking therapy. A lot of times you hear you need to pray about it, or go talk to your pastor, or go talk to an elder, and not realizing that sometimes those individuals are not equipped or even have the education or the background to deal with mental illness. And it's so mental illness a lot of times is painted in the church, in my opinion, as something that's evil and that is bad, and not something that an individual can go through every day of their life, or something that everybody deals with. So, growing up, you hear about it and you really don't give into it. So for me personally, my background in school was social work. So once again, you hear about it, you're encouraging others to go, but you don't think about it yourself. And it wasn't until maybe several years ago I found, I was like, you know what? Not exactly comfortable with where my mental health is. So I'm going to see a therapist. And it really changed my life because of the fact that I realized, you know what? There's not necessarily anything wrong with me. It's more so I'm just having some challenges on the way I view things, how I'm addressing things, and really wanted to make sure that I am healthy emotionally. And I think that's the biggest thing the church does not really emphasize is it's okay to go seek therapy. They can help you through your emotional health. And a lot of times I don't think we realize that we may be facing with different mental health issues and don't know it because we're trying to suppress it, or we're thinking that our faith is weak, or we're thinking that our pastor's going to handle it, and not understanding that you can be the strongest Christian and still deal with mental health issues. So it's so important to understand that, hey, we all deal with it. I even probably go through the Bible and think of individuals who had mental health issues. And, once again, getting that support is more important. And I think it's just a part of that faith walk that you go through. And I really think that the church needs to emphasize more on mental health, and understanding that it's not necessarily something that's demonic. It's something that we all deal with, and we all have to address it, and encouraging people to seek therapy, seek help. It's really good for you. It will actually make your faith walk stronger.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really my opinion.
So you just said your background, and I forgot to just tell everyone a little bit about your background. So if you can tell everyone kind of your background and your experience in the mental health industry.
Okay, so my background, I went to Oakwood University. which is a Christian SDA school, and I majored in social work. I'm not necessarily practicing the social work field per se, but I am using my social work skills. I work with in the student life or student services arena. I'm director of student activities, and so I deal with students every day. And a lot of times they come to me and talk about their mental health issues. Even with my social work background, I can pick up on individuals who have mental health issues. So it's something that we all deal with. I believe you don't necessarily have to be in the mental health field to identify it, but I'm a strong advocate for my students to go get help, go see a therapist. They're there for you. And so, yeah, that's really my background.
Okay. And Mark Cooper, if you can just tell everyone a little bit about yourself and your thoughts about mental illness in the church.
Okay, well, let me first shout out to my fellow alum, Raymond. Didn't realize that. OC for me. I don't know if it was OU for you. It was OC for me. So yes, I'm a graduate of Oakwood College, 1987. The years are just getting further and further. But I graduated from Oakwood with the nursing degree, and actually I hold the proud status of being the first male graduate out of their BSN program. And after graduating, I wanted to either do psych or critical care, and it just so happened that Huntsville Hospital at the time only had a psych position. So I've been doing mental health or psychiatric nursing for now 30 years. 25 of those years have been in acute psychiatry, ranging from adolescents, adults, geriatrics, even had years dealing with the criminally insane in Virginia. So dealing with the most dangerous criminally insane persons that were incarcerated. And now I'm doing polytrauma case management at the VA. So mental health has been a passion of mine. I guess when I entered Oakwood, I wanted to do psychology, and I realized I was going to have to get my PhD, and I wanted to get out of school really fast. So it was a good blend of doing mental health nursing. And I always say that to get into mental health, you have to have a passion for it because it's not for everybody. So this is a great topic. Being immersed in mental health, it's either fortunate or unfortunate. Like Raymond said, he can pick up on a lot of symptoms and things like that. And so fortunately or unfortunately, after a few minutes with a lot of folk, I kind of pick up on things too. But as it relates to the church, I echo a lot of what Raymond was saying. It's always been, the topic, of this group is the elephant in the room. It always seems to be a faith issue sometimes when you start having thoughts that are maybe different than what people think are the norm. And so a lot of times people don't know where to go with those thoughts because, the term crazy comes up if you start having thoughts of overwhelming hopelessness, helplessness, even where it might increase to where person is feeling suicidal. And so now you're faced with spiritual conflict. You're thinking about wanting to kill yourself, and if you kill yourself, you're not going to heaven, which again, we have no proof of that. And so you've got the spiritual conflict, and a lot of times people will just sit on it. And the church, from my experience, want people just to kind of pray it away. And we have to get away from that. One of the things with that term, praying it away, you have no rebuttal for it because, yes, if you're a Christian, believe in God, you know that God can do any and everything. And so when that term is presented, a lot of times for me, I don't have a rebuttal for that, because you're right. The Lord can cure it all. But what you're trying to get people to also understand is that God is the creator of all, which means he's also created and allowed man to have some insight into, mental health. And it's okay to seek some help in other places.
But how do people get rid of that stigma, or either put that stigma aside to say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and seek help? Where would they begin? How did they overcome that?
Well, I would say it's got to start with education, because a lot of times people aren't just going to come to that revelation on their own. So it's a process that needs to really start in the church, where the church is giving the okay and to seek help, not outside, but with God. And it's got to start there, where the church takes a lead and changes some of that that thinking that you can only get healed within the church or through prayer on your knees. And again, that's all true, but the church has to also recognize that there are people who are trained that can help others.
So do you think there's a stigma also, and it's kind of a twofold type question. Years ago, people never thought mental illness was an issue, or they didn't want to pinpoint it as an issue. And then also the other side of this, do you wonder why, more so in the African American community, is it considered a taboo? We don't talk about it, or we suppress it, hold it in. What are your thoughts on that?
I definitely want to address that. I want to say it kind of goes back to the church. The pastor is everything, for us. And if the pastor can't do it, then no one else can.
There's so many layers to this, especially when you start talking about the Black community. When we think about just our socialization with religion or even spirituality, prayer and biblical principles have been around for forever, for thousands of years. And so that is what, we use to get through. And now we're talking about Black community, where having access to adequate health care, that's just a recent development, and now it's only still for a select few when you look at the numbers. So a lot of times what you find is that many Black Christians have just been totally dependent on faith to get through, a host of different issues. And so you're talking about breaking down years and years of, whether it be mistrust for the healthcare system and your total dependence on what you were taught is you got to depend on the Lord to get through the trauma that we as Black people have experienced.
Then why is the resources not available in the church? That's my biggest thing. Why is it not available? Why do we have to go outside the church? Why can't we have these proper resources? You have the educators available to provide these resources, but why isn't the church saying, okay, this is what we're going to do? We have so many other developed groups in our church. We have, you have, of course, the food ministry. We have, other ministries that are very lucrative, but why don't we have a social working group ministry? People that are licensed in social working, so people or families or children can go to talk to social workers or professionals like yourselves to be able to get guidance and direction. And if these licensed individuals or members don't directly want to handle that because they deal with it every day, maybe they can direct them and say, hey, I know someone that can lead you, or these are the tools that I would direct you to do to get you to where you need to be. But why isn't that even offered? There's no guidance even in that aspect.
churches need to realize that there is a mental health, I don't want to say crisis, but they're a component in the church. And I'll say we as Adventists have a lot of educators, like you said, professionals, therapists, and all of that. And so it needs to be a priority for churches to have that ministry set aside. You know, if you have a therapist or social workers or, you know, psychiatrists, you know, in the congregation, you know, make it a ministry. Mm-hmm. You know, you just open this thing up so much. You get to the point where, okay, if I'm a therapist at a church, now as a member, I've got to wonder, now what I reveal to this person who's sitting next to me on this pew is going to be the topic at the next potluck.
Exactly, and
that's why people don't do it.
So it gets tricky, even though we're all held to HIPAA and things like that, but we've all been to church potluck.
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to piggyback on that. I think the church gossip has really probably strayed people away from seeking her help with inside the church. Mm-hmm. So there's a level of trust just to discuss certain things. And so I think for some people, there's some comfort actually to talk with someone who does not know them, who they don't interact with on a regular basis. So I think there's a comfort for that. You hit something key. I think the church should have a means of ministry for help, to referral people to other therapists. But I also think maybe having support groups inside the church helps, because there's a strength when you know you have fellow supporters or fellow individuals who are going through that with you. So I think that's an avenue that the church can probably take as far as depending on the issue. But I do think there's a level of trust that prevents a lot of churches from having those type of ministries or even individuals coming forward to someone to have those individuals. And you never know, some people may be afraid because they know this particular person is connected to the person who you may have issues with or is causing the problems. So it's a very touchy situation, and I'm going to say it has a lot of thought and prayer has to be put in when you're trying to do those particular ministries or provide those type of services within the church.
Imagine if we, you know, in a city like here in Charlotte, if there's 3 to 6 churches and you've got therapists or psychiatrists or mental health professionals at all of these churches, and you set up a system where when someone in your church needed some assistance, they wouldn't have to see someone exactly in the church that they're going to. Maybe they would see someone at the other church, and you know, it becomes a ministry where a person doesn't have to have insurance. I don't know. I'm just thinking off the top of my head now, but the church can do better.
We're the elephant in the room because we're trying to open people's eyes, open people's minds to recognize there's an issue out there. And this has been something that's been hidden for years, and that's not discussed. And to your point, Mark, maybe we need to do, like you're saying, develop just a chain of connection and communication with other churches and build people of various platforms of that education professionals to be able to know, okay, these are the resources we can go to, put a list together and be able, it doesn't even have to be under one denomination. It can be a Baptist professional, it can be a Methodist, it can be an Adventist, it can be, as long as they're licensed and professional under that umbrella, they have those resources, but it's still Christian based. So is that possible?
It's possible. I think, again, we keep going back to the term layers. and Raymond can probably talk to this. You know, if you were to put together a team of people like that, there's a whole lot of responsibility that goes with when you start engaging in therapy with people who have various mental health issues. So the church would have to really, as an organization, would have to support such a thing, because, you know, there's liability issues and things like that. And so people, you know, Raymond or myself sometimes aren't, you're not willing to put your license on the line. You work really hard to do that. And this is a litigious society. And, you know, if I go to a therapist or a family member goes to a therapist and, you know, catastrophically something happens, or the person kills himself or something, people will sue the therapist sometimes. Or if the therapist doesn't quite do the right thing by reporting or, you know, getting someone into the hospital, it's a massive it's a massive ton of work sometimes to provide therapy, because there's so much involved with that. So it'd have to be a huge conversation.
So does it start with just having just a seminar, an outreach seminar? Because that's not really done in any of the churches. You know, you have all these other, you have women's ministries, you have, you know, singles ministries, you have all of these, you know, and you have these conventions or these, you know, after, like you said, potlucks of discussion. Maybe that needs to be a potluck of a discussion that we say, hey, let's put together a seminar on, you know, mental illness, and you get those professionals and get a panelist on there to just really go out and go church to church. And maybe those individuals don't have to directly confide in getting that professional help directly with those panelists, but y'all are giving the tools that are needed to help families and loved ones that are dealing with various issues. Maybe that's what needs to be done. What is your insight on that?
I think education is probably the first step.
Right.
We need to educate individuals on what is mental health and what does it look like. I think a lot of people may not be aware that they're dealing with those issues. So just having a broad discussion, hopefully it will start getting people to really think about it. And you talked about it earlier. You said, you know, women's ministry, they can focus on women's health. Men's ministry can focus on men's health. There's so many different aspects, and bringing in those professionals to talk about it. That's another way to start connecting individuals to those professions. And, you know, for me, you know, I did my research for my students, you know. Yes, we do have a counselor on campus, but sometimes they may not be comfortable. So my whole thing is, if you're not comfortable with this person, go to someone else. So it's a blessing in Huntsville. There's actually a group of Christian therapists. It's a nonprofit organization. So if you don't have insurance, they have a sliding pay scale. So I've had students that were able to pay between $5 to $15 per session to go get therapy. But I really think education is the first step, and it has to start with the leaders of the church to push that. If the leaders show that they are encouraging it, I think it will leak over to the members, and it will just go on from there. But I think the leaders of the church have to recognize that this is a ministry that's needed in the church, and start developing and pulling community resources together. Some churches may not have a mental health specialist, but they may know someone else. And I think that's the beautiful thing about the Black community. Because of the family aspect, we know, you know, if I'm out of sugar, I can go next door and get sugar. So it's that same concept. I may not have a mental health therapist, but there may be another church or another person that I can go to. You know, there may be a college. They have professors. Those professors may be willing to come on campus, come to the church and do those seminars. So I think education, that's where it starts first.
Any insight from you, Mark?
Oh no, I echo that. I was actually going to say the same thing. It's education, giving people the education potentially gives persons the permission to do more than just pray. And I'm not knocking prayer at all. Right? Let's give folk permission to pray and um, seek professional help, and we have to just push that as much as we can. It's okay. It's okay.
Well, gentlemen, my co-host Jackie, do you have any other additional words?
Oh, yeah. Just still appreciate everybody for coming on and sharing with our audience how mental health, or this to get the conversation going in the household, and then from there, growth, education, starting with that. Thank you.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. And thank you for watching The Big E, the elephant in the room, where we speak about the unspeakable.
Thank you.
Welcome to What's Going On? My name is Demita Joe. Each Wednesday, you can find me here at 3 p.m. I'll be over here discussing different things that are going on and try to bring you a boost of positivity for your week, because we all need this. We're going to share some feel-good stories. We might find a hometown hero. We may take a look at some trending topic. And sometimes we might even find a lesson in a not-so-warm and fuzzy story if we can. I'm Demita Joe, and I'll see you guys on the next episode right here on What's Going On?
This is Tyron
and Nicole with your weekly RATV news break. Each Thursday at 12 noon Eastern, we'll come to you with the latest news, trends, and more with a positive spin.
We know there's a lot of positive news that doesn't get reported, but we want to give you the opportunity to share your story here on RATV. If you have a positive news story you want us to share, you can submit your story to news@re-tv.net.
Don't forget to subscribe to the Relationship Entertainment Television YouTube channel. Download the new RATV Live app on your mobile device and follow Relationship Entertainment Television on your favorite social media platform.
Don't forget, make sure you tune into the RATV News Break each Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern. Until then, be blessed and be great.
Hey, it's your girl Tia Robertson. I'm the host of Entrepreneur Insider. Every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern for entrepreneurs and news that you need to know about. See you there.
Growing up in the church, we saw a lot. Things that people refuse to talk about. The elephants in the room. Mental illness, sexual abuse, broken families, domestic violence, and so much more. The Big E, the elephant in the room, is a show that sheds light on these topics. We're here to speak about the unspeakable.